Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharini. We have chosen to celebrate Sister Nivedita's 150th birth anniversary here at JNU, and I'm very happy to be part of this program. I heard that JNU has the students of JNU, more than 50% are girls. So I should congratulate JNU for that, because this itself is in no small measure due to the pioneering efforts of Sister Nivedita. This scenario has come today. Just imagine in her time, when she was working as a teacher in her school in Bagh Bazar, Kolkata, the literacy rate of Indian women was just 1.5% in the country. Today we have come to a stage when 50% of the girl students in JNU they are girls, and they are doing so well, especially in the postgraduate streams. So it's something to be proud of, and we should be thankful to people like these who have made such a big difference in India, starting from that point. Sister Nivedita, as you just heard, and you also saw it in that documentary, she was an educator of repute in England before she met Swami Vivekananda. She became a teacher at the young age of 17, and she started running a school. She was the principal of a school at the young age of 25. And she was part of the intellectual circles of London. She was the secretary of the Sesame Club, which was a club devoted to where intellectuals like Bernard Shaw and Thomas Huxley used to speak. They used to discuss all the important matters of the day, and Sister Nivedita was one of the leading intellectuals at that time. She was a prolific writer, she was a powerful speaker, and she was well versed in the philosophy of education. She was well versed in the new education movement set forth by Froebel and Pestalozzi. As a result, she was an educator of repute at that time itself. But she had her own doubts. She was looking forward for something, a higher call, what she called. And she found it in the words of Swami Vivekananda, who came to London in 1895. One of Margaret Noble's friends, Isabel Margeson, she one day sent an invitation to Margaret Noble to come and attend a talk in her home. And that talk actually changed her life, because when she first saw Swamiji, she could feel truth radiating from him. And then and there, she understood that there was a deeper perspective to life, and this higher call which she was waiting for, she in a way felt the reality of it. And she immediately responded also. After that, she started attending Swamiji's talks in London, and soon she found out that a life of dedication to Swamiji's cause was actually what she wanted in life. So she told this to Swamiji. Now Swamiji hesitated a little before he finally accepted this, because you see, for an Irish woman to suddenly come to India and take up the work of the education of women, it is no small matter, especially in that time. The conservative society in India, how will it accept this? And what exactly would she do? What would be her plan of action? And mainly her actual inclination was very spiritual. She was deeply interested in Vedanta. It answered all her questions. She was no easy student, but she would argue, she would clash with Swamiji, but all that, it only indicated she was so deeply into this. And finally, when she made her decision and Swamiji welcomed her, then started this immense phase in her life, her actual contribution and dedication to the cause of India, and her pioneering efforts in the education of Indian women. So you see, it is such an irony to even conceive of this idea that nationalistic education for Indian women was put into motion through the benign hands of this Irish woman. She was Irish by birth, English by education. And so when she came into India in January 1898 it was, and then she started her school the same year, November 1898. So within a year, her school began. what I would especially like to discuss in this talk is some of her unique educational methods. Because you see, this is an educational institution. Faculty members are here. So even today, what we are not able to understand and what we are not able to apply in the educational apparatus, Sister Nivedita realized that and applied it in her own time, 120 years back. And what were these ideas like? You see, it is not that girls' education had not begun in Kolkata at that time. There were schools for girls, like for example, there was the Brahmo Balika Vidyalaya, there was the Bethune school, there were a few other institutions, but they either swung towards extreme orthodoxy or towards extreme modernism. While Sister Nivedita's school combined the best of both, because as I told you, she was well versed in the Western philosophy of education. When she came to India and into contact with Swami Vivekananda while yet in London, she saw that the Indian method involved the training of the instrument of perception, the instrument of knowledge, mind training, mind management featured primarily in the Indian method. And she was deeply influenced by this. So in her school, she combined the best of the East and the West. And so her educational model is very unique. While I was studying this for a talk, some things deeply struck me, few of which I would like to mention here. See, first of all, in her school, she made sure that her girls stuck to their heritage. They were receiving English education, they were coming to her to learn life skills. She made sure that they respected each of their customs, even their rituals. You see, at that time, even now in Kolkata, Saraswati Puja is a very big event. And it is, in many of the educational institutions, it is observed. So Sister Nivedita also had an image of Mother Saraswati brought in her school, and it was worshipped in the first year. And she saw to it that she remained out of the whole thing, because at that time she was looked upon as an outcast, as a mlecha, and so she didn't want to take part in all those rituals and all that. So she just kept herself apart from the puja, and then she even had offerings made of whole fruit and dry fruit and all that, so that nobody is offended regarding the puja. And when it was time to share the prasad also, she asked the girls to take the prasad and go home and eat there. So all these things she observed, and she made sure that her girls respected all these customs. But the girls were very sensitive. They saw what was happening, and so the next year they took upon the responsibility of the puja into their own hands. They organized the puja, they organized the food that was to be cooked and offered to the goddess. They themselves actually fried some puris and made some curry, cut fruit. Fruit was cut and offered to the goddess. All this they did, and when it was time to actually share the prasad, they went up and pulled Sister Nivedita down. They dragged her by her hand and told her, "No, sister, you have to share the prasad with us." Now you see, there is a lot for us to learn from this. Where ritual is required, where the custom has to be observed, it has to be observed. Because you see, what is the purpose of a ritual? Today we are very good at actually not doing any of this. But what is the purpose of a ritual? It is meant to condition a particular sentiment into the human mind. That is the purpose of a ritual. Because just rational thought will not condition sentiments readily, always. So you actually repeat the thing through action again and again until you get the sentiment properly into your head. This is the whole idea. And once the sentiment has taken place in your psychology, you outgrow the custom. You outgrow the ritual. So you see, both of these things have come into this incident. She observed the Saraswati Puja as it was observed there. And again, she helped her girls outgrow the custom also by involving her in a big way in the puja. So this is how she trained her girls. The best of the East and the West. In many aspects of her educational training, this has come in. Her stress on the vernaculars is another aspect. She herself did not know Bengali initially when she came, but she made sure her girls learnt it. And she also started learning it. And once, in her class, she asked one of the girls, well, what is Bengali for line? They were using the word line actually, line tano. And then she asked, what is line in Bengali? And they didn't know. And after some time, one little girl said, oh, it is Rekha. And she was so happy. She said, yes, remember, don't forget your mother tongue. Now, why is this? This is something we have to learn today also. All of us want our children to have English education, very good. But if they lose touch with their mother tongue, with their vernaculars, in a way they lose touch with their culture. Because language is the carrier of the culture. The ideas of the culture are somehow enmeshed in the language. It's a very deep psychological aspect of linguistics. And if they lose connect with the language, they in some way lose connection with the culture. So this is another something which we can pick up from Sister Nivedita's educational methods. Another thing is, which really struck me, was the love she gave her students. You see, teachers who inspire are teachers who love, who can immensely love. They can bring the whole force of their character into their teaching method. For her girls, sister was a mother. This is how they looked upon her, and that is why everything she said, everything she asked them to do, naturally they did it. They actually fell in love with her personality because of the love she exuded. And in what forms did it take? You see, she made sure it was not just about the curriculum, not just that they picked up this and that. She made sure they picked up some life skill so that it will stand by them in times of need. She made sure that they were well provided for. They had enough to eat at home. They had their breakfast. She saw to it that they had proper clothes. They had proper study material. Through her, you saw it in that documentary. Through her own meager income, she saw to this. There were a number of child widows who used to come to her school. And these little girls, just imagine the condition, because child marriage was common and in those times, there were also child widows, 6, 7, 8-year-old girls, and bound in very rigid customs, used to come to her school. Ekadashi, the observance of Ekadashi was a big terror to them, because that was a day when widows were not supposed to eat anything or drink anything. So the entire day they had to starve, and in the terrible heat of Kolkata, not even a drop of water they could drink. So the way the girls used to come to school, those child widows, their very faces would become dark. And looking at this, sister's heart would melt. So what she would do quietly, without announcing anything, she would just take them to a corner in her school and make them sit there quietly and tell them, shh, don't say anything. And then she would bring out a pot of rasgullas and feed them even the syrup, so that at least let there be energy for the day. So this feeling, you see, this was the thing which actually struck such a chord in the hearts of her students. So a few of her students have written in her reminiscences that it was this thing that actually anchored them in what Nivedita meant to give by way of education. The love which she gave them, the understanding which she gave them. So you see, the way to transmit ideas, the way to give knowledge is only through love, actually speaking. Because if the commercial element or some other element comes in between, that transmission will be cut. So this is again something which we must pick up from Nivedita. Training of the feeling, she gave immense importance in her educational method. One interesting incident which I can tell you here is, one day she had gone to the house of Jagdish Chandra Bose. It was close to her 16 Bosepada Lane. And she went there because she was an editor to his works, And she went there and she was absorbed in that work when she suddenly remembered it was Ekadashi. And especially one child widow, her name was Prafulla Devi. She would be waiting for sister in the school. Immediately she rushed back to the school. She took the girl into her arms and said, "I'm so sorry, my dear. How did I forget this?" And she fed the child. You see, to this extent she has gone to make sure that her girls in every way, they were well provided for. And the importance she gave to the training of feeling, this is something we really have to learn anew today. Because what we have done with our education system, the entire stress is on analytical thinking ability. Isn't it? Tell me truly. The entire thing has gone into that. But you know how Indian culture sees it. A human being has 3 faculties: thinking, feeling, and willing. So in these 3 faculties, if you are going to train only the thinking faculty, and in that only the analytical thinking faculty, you don't even train 1/3 of the person. So Sister Nivedita was adamant upon this. You see, let me quote her own words because they are very powerful. She says, "There is nothing so important as the training of feeling. To feel nobly and choose loftily and honestly is 1,000-fold more important to the educational process than anything else. It's 1,000-fold more important. And this was very much part of our culture. You know, in the Vedic age, in the Vedic times, the very first ashrama was called Brahmacharya ashram. It involved the training of feeling, the bringing out of the energies of youth to very purposeful activity. You know, when we were children and learning Sanskrit, we had to recite what are called subhashitani, good counsels, before the Sanskrit class started. And one of those subhashitani, I remember it even now, because it's very significant on the importance which our culture gave to this particular idea, and especially in the educational process. One of those good counsels was, it actually defines what a pandit is. Who's a man of knowledge? And this is how the verse goes. Matrivat paradareshu paradravyeshu loshtavat atmavat sarvabhuteshu ya pashyati sa panditaha. He is a man of knowledge who is able to see a mother in all women. He is a man of knowledge who is able to see the wealth of others as just metal. He doesn't covet the wealth of others. He is a man of knowledge who is able to see himself in all beings. This deep sense of empathy, identification, unity. One who gets it, he is a man of knowledge. Not one who has just collected a few intellectual ideas. Google is there to give us all that today. But the essential development of character within, the essential training of feeling, it is of paramount importance in the development of character. This is something our educational system also needs to integrate into itself today. And do you know how Sister Nivedita did it in her school? There is one wonderful example which Sarla Bala Sarkar has written in her reminiscences. She says one day she came into the class and she was all fired up with the idea of Bharatvarsh. She used to call India Bharatvarsh. Just like Swamiji, you see, he used to actually get emotional when he used to talk of India. Sister Nivedita also was like that. When it came to Bharatvarsh, she would forget everything. And that day she started telling them, you must know how to love your nation, how to love Bharatvarsh. And how will you know how to love her unless you understand her? And how will you understand her unless you meditate upon her? So meditate upon Bharatvarsh. And then you know what she did? She just sat in the middle of the class and removed her, you see that Rudraksha beads she used to wear around her neck. She removed that from her neck and held it in her hand and started chanting loudly, Bharatvarsh, Bharatvarsh, Bharatvarsh. This is how you should meditate upon Bharatvarsh. If you meditate like this upon your nation, you will know its glory. You will understand its heritage. You will know its needs. You will know its aim. You will know its purpose in the community of nations. This is how you should meditate on Bharatvarsh. It will give you understanding of Bharatvarsh. It will give you love for Bharatvarsh. So you see this picture of Sister Nivedita, Sarla Bala Sarkar writes that one who saw this incident, there was no doubt in their hearts that India was the heart of her heart. It was the soul of her soul. And that is why she asserted such a huge influence on the nation. In a short span of years, you see about 14 years she spent in India. In that she has done so much because of the immense love which was bubbling within her for the nation, for the heritage, for the culture. She became a daughter of this nation. You see, this is the uniqueness of her role in India. She did not come here just to patronize Indians, to take up a few projects and fund them. She came here to dedicate herself to this soil. She became a daughter of this land. And that is why this personality is unique in Indian history. And as I told you, pioneering efforts in education of Indian women have very many important features. One more feature is her absolute importance, the importance she gave on this sense of social responsibility and developing the civic sense in our students. Whenever I look at the textbooks of school students, you see, especially high school civics, well, it's very pathetic, I would say, because just how to conduct an election, how many members should be there in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, this does not cover the whole of civics. What actually should we be giving our children in terms of education in social studies? We should be teaching them how to actually serve others, because Sister Nivedita held social responsibility and a deeply developed civic sense to be at the heart of national development. And if this is not developed, no amount of knowledge on how to conduct an election or how to do what in politics is going to be of any help to us or to our students who will become the future of India tomorrow. And regarding this, look at her words. She says, national feeling is above all feeling for others. It is rooted in the public spirit, in a strong civic sense. And how to develop that sense, she says, through small acts of sacrifice. Just like how a human being, a person learns to sacrifice for the family, and that way his individuality expands, his I expands. Then he learns to sacrifice gradually for his community. So his I expands further. Then it should come to the society he lives in, and then into the nation. This is spiritual growth. This is spiritual growth, because spirituality has only to do with removing this small I. Anything, any action done without the sense of agency becomes sadhana. So for an ordinary person, he can take this up as a spiritual practice. Any work you do, if the I has expanded there, it is a sadhana. It is a spiritual practice. So this is what she recommended. And in today's our lifestyle, you see, how can we apply this civic sense? How can it come to us? I can give you few examples which we see in our everyday life. You see the running tap on the road. It's a common thing in India. How many of us go and close the tap? After all, it is precious national resource which is going waste. How many of us feel that it is wrong? These are the little things which she stressed upon. She used to say, helping the wailing victim of an accident on a road. Does it come instantaneously to us? If we are doing this, we are developing the civic sense. And look at her words in this regard. She says, the elements of nationality are civic. Nationality doesn't mean, well, calling forth slogans, setting up committees to fight for this and that. It actually means feeling for others. If we are able to do that, it's a huge revolution which we will be causing without having to do any sloganry, without having to do any of this. She says, the man who will not suffer some slight risk or discomfort for national good is not the man to whom you can entrust the banner of an army. It starts with this. The civic sense starts with feeling for others, doing things for others, with social responsibility, a sense of what I can do for my society. You have a classic example right before you. What this person is doing for you. Look at this one man being able to support 1,500 destitute children coming from very vulnerable conditions and providing them with the complete tool for transformation, education, being a parent to them in all ways, and actually changing destinies. One man, more than 1,500 children today. How much bigger is Parivar going to be tomorrow? So you see, we have such men in this country who have taken up. No wonder his role model is Swamiji and Sister Nivedita, people like these. So we have such young people in our country who are completely imbued with this kind of high idealism and who really want to make something valuable of their lives. You see, this is the whole thing which we have to learn from Sister Nivedita. I think my time is also up, but what we should actually pick up from all this is, human life is to be dedicated to higher purposes. Then only our energies will get the satisfaction of having done something in life. That is the purpose of human life. And it should be a dedication without any tag behind it. When you give of yourself freely, you naturally evolve spiritually. This is the natural way to grow up in life. So you find this beautifully expressed in these great lives. It is my prayer on this 150th birth anniversary of Sister Nivedita that she really bless us with this high idealism. It should come into our lives, it should come into our works, it should come into our thinking processes, into our normal everyday dialogue. That way we will be really able to become real. We will be able to appreciate the philosophy of Swami Vivekananda best if we are able to do this in our lives. Thank you very much.